my review of Western music system or engineers, like I said. As I explained, I talked to some musicians, and I am not a natural musician. You know, everything I've got to kind of learn by force. And you know, the way I look at theory is kind of applied mathematics. You know, there are certain rules you follow, and when people break those rules, you know, it can often lead to really good music, but understanding that is kind of more complex. This is basic stuff, and the really fundamental rules as I see them. Okay, so quickly, I'm going to talk about 12 tones with equal temperament. The problem with doing this kind of work is that you need to use words that you haven't defined yet. So everything gets really circular. So there'll be words that, like, for instance, equal temperament is part of the lecture for next week. So what you need to know now is equal temperament is basically modern music. You know, you've got 12 keys, 12 frets to an octave on a guitar, and that is equal temperament. Pretty much that's all we use is equal temperament. We're going to talk about just temperament in order to compare and contrast with equal temperament next week, but you don't really see just temperament much. You can with kind of the, I guess, infinitely variable instruments. You know, like a keyboard or a guitar. Well, let's start with the keyboard. A keyboard has keys, you press them. If you have a pitch bender, you can bend it. A guitar, you have a certain number of notes that are fretted, you can bend those as well. But then you get to things that are very variable, like trombones or violins, and there, you know, you need everything. So we'll discuss that next week. We're going to talk about class to the staff, basic music reading, and a lot of this is basically, we need it in order to talk about temperament next week. In order to do something with temperament, we need to know what scales are and what chords are. So I'm going to talk a little about pitch and rhythm, notes and rests, measure, rhythm, how to read sheet music. Unfortunately, I don't have a piece of sheet music to read. That would be ideal, but we will, like I said, use it in the future. And what I'll try and do is come up with something for when we do MIDI, so that we can compare and contrast how a MIDI file describes the same thing that a piece of sheet music does. Okay, so that's the intervals. Now we're going to, the main thing we need to do is we need to build up so we can understand the formulas for scales and chords. That's your first homework, right? I don't like to teach the homework, but practically speaking, to do the homework, we need to do that. But it's also the foundation of most Western music. Okay, so 12 tones. I kind of wrote the note names over the keyboard, so you can map everything. You can see there are letters in blue, and those are what corresponds to white keys. And then the letters in black in between are the enharmonics. And those, in equal temperament, the enharmonics are two names for the same pitch. Okay? So, you know, if these are the white keys. And then that, you know, if that's C, this could be C sharp or D flat. And which we call it depends on the key. There's kind of rigid rules, and some of them aren't obvious at first. And a lot of it is based on, you know, millennia of history, really. Because the system of music we use has evolved over the years. So there are certain rules we follow as to whether we're calling it sharp or flat. And next week we'll see in just temperament that they're not the same. So again, there's a lot of history behind it. Okay, so the basic thing that didn't come out here is the sharp sign. Kind of looks like a number sign, and the flat looks like that lowercase b. Okay, so yeah, if we play all the notes. And that's one octave. The note names repeat each octave, and if you look at the keyboard, you'll see that this pattern of keys repeats each octave. In fact, I started repeating it on the slide. And we'll get to what an octave means next. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the distance between any two adjacent notes. Okay, so we need to talk about, we're going to talk about intervals later. I'm going to define what that is. But right now I'm just defining two terms, whole step and half step. Okay, so if we play I haven't defined the C major scale, but if I play just the blue notes, that involves some whole and some half. Now the question is, which are which? So whole half steps, like I said, are between two adjacent keys. Whole steps are between 1, 2 keys. So if we look at, forgive me, I've discovered animation. This, from this white key to this black key is a half step. That's a half step. From that white key, which is D to E, is a whole step. So half step, whole step. Okay. Now the next interval, that half step or whole step? Half step, right? So even when you got two white keys next to each other, it's a half step between them. So there's no relation between the half steps and the white keys and the whole steps and the black key. None of that. It's just the distance between them. What is represented by the black and white keys are whether they're natural notes versus the enharmonics. Okay, next one between the black key and the white key. That's that. And between the two black keys. Right. I'll try not to overuse that animation. Okay. So the distance we covered, and then the distance between the repeat of the keyboard is an octave. So from that C to that C is an octave, that C to that C is an octave. Those are all octaves. So those go by the same notes. So the piano is kind of nice in this way in that everything is well represented. Each key in the sequence of 12 keys is a note. Whereas on a guitar, it doesn't work out that way. You've got 6 strings, and they're all off by a fourth, and they all have different preposition, and so you can't easily look at it and know where you have to memorize it. Whereas with the keyboard, it's very easy. Once you know the pattern, you figure out the key, regardless of what octave you're in or what string or on the string, one keyboard. Okay, so we'll talk about clefs. We're going to see the staff in a minute. At the beginning of each staff, the clef. And you'll probably see one of two clefs, either the treble clef, which is shown at top, and I also discovered clip art this year. So it'll look like that. It will be used for instruments in a higher frequency range. Now, again, I said when I started playing music, I was playing clarinet. Everything I read was in treble clef. What that meant is the middle C, which is about 261 hertz, which I think should be